Welcome back to another episode of Health is Wealth, and thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. And as always, I am beyond grateful and thankful to each and every one of you who was tuning into today's episode and also tuning in to help support the podcast, as every week I am sharing a new episode, just sharing words of thoughts and hopes of inspiration and motivation on my crazy journey and crazy ride that we call life, in hopes that it brings value into your world. So thank you once again for being here. And what I briefly wanted to talk to you about today is setting the standards, being the example, and how important I believe it is, not just for you, but for people around you, right? Because, we naturally tend to look at one another, kind of figure out this thing called life, and what direction to go and what to be and who to be and all of these things. And when it comes down to it, there's many different, examples in this world of, that we can all demonstrate of either a person to be or a person not to be, good or bad. And I think it's always important to set our standards high, to be a good example of what to be in this life, because it does so much, not just for you, but those who are in your perimeter, in your proximity, because with stepping up to become the best version of ourselves, setting those higher standards, setting the bars, being a good example, it has such a powerful ability to really steer people, outside of yourself, obviously, but around you in the right direction to do better things with their own life. I've been around many situations and many examples of this myself, to where, I haven't had the best people around me setting the best standards or best examples. And I kind of looked to them, and it kind of took me down some wrong paths and making some wrong decisions and so forth. But I've absolutely had people around me who had higher standards for themselves, who were better examples. And those things caused me to want to be better myself and go in a better direction and do better things in life. And I think it should be a priority for each and every one of us to want to do that, because when we set our standards high, right, we tend to have a better quality of life, to be honest, because what we're saying to ourselves, as we have higher standards and we hold ourselves to that because we set them, is that, we won't accept anything less than this. It's about self-worth and self-respect. It's about a good moral code and values and beliefs in life. And it's one of my priorities to do my best to set the standard, to set the bar, to say, this is how I need to be. This is how I need to live. Because every time I do that, I hold myself to higher expectations of what I expect from myself and how I need to, conduct myself in life, right? The things that, that I need to do that are a must, that are non-negotiables and everything. And on top of that, being a good example, because it is one thing I pride myself on wanting to be, especially now in life, because I am older, As I remember being younger, you always look into somebody older to model after. You're looking to them, again, as an example, as that role model, and how they do things and what they do. And you tend to think that, hey, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so I hold myself to this standard of, making sure I'm being the best influence, role model, example that I possibly can be, with how I speak, with my actions, with the things that I do in my life, with the direction that I'm going in, because I know that somebody is looking at me, seeing the things that I do, seeing how I am, and thinking, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I'm supposed to be. And whether people make it known or not, always understand that somebody is watching you. And I think that's one of the big important things of why you should always, set your aim on wanting to be, a good example and setting the, just remember that you're always going to be an example of something. You're always going to have a standard of something, and that's either going to be the right way and the right things in life, or you're going to be an example of like the bad things and the wrong things in life. I've once been that person, bad influence, bad example, not holding high standards or any of that. My life, was a reflection of that, and if you followed that, you weren't going to end up in the best of places either. So it is absolutely a priority for me, to hold the standard, right? To set the standard, because sometimes there's not maybe people around you who are setting higher standards for themselves. Sometimes, life is waiting for you to stand up and say, you know what? We're not going to live this way anymore. We're not going to be this kind of person anymore. We're going to raise the bar. We're going to raise the level of our standards. We're going to be better examples by doing this, being this person inside and out in all of it for others around you to see that and be like, you know what? That's what I want. That's who I want to be. That's the direction that I want to head in. And it is such a powerful thing, because when you set that standard, people tend to gravitate towards what people are doing around them, so if the standards are low and nobody's being a good example and so forth, that tends to be, what it is, but, people tend to gravitate upwards. So if somebody around somebody sets the standards a little bit higher, people can't feel like, like, oh man, this guy's, this person's doing a lot, like they're ambitious, or, this is their higher standards. And, it's very contagious, right? And so I think it should be a goal for all of us to continue to raise those standards, continue to be a good example, because it's important for us to want to reach that level of personal excellence that's going to get us in better places in life, that's going to allow for a better quality of life. That's one of the things that I've noticed personally, right? Is that, the higher I raise my standards, the more quality of life I live, because it changes my mindset, the things that I do, the direction that I'm going in, the people that I'm around, and so forth. So guys, be that one to step it up today. Set the standard, set the bar, right? Be a good example of what to be. That way, when people see you, it'll take them places. It'll take them in good directions. It will give them a good example of what to be in life and where to go. And I think, we all need that around us, because again, we're always looking at each other for this code of how to live and what to do in life. And if you can be the one who sets the standard and raises the bar, you can help change lives of many people around you. Like I said, for me, it's something I pride myself on, because it is a big goal of mine to set the standard, to work above, what everybody else is doing, to continue to raise that bar, to not just help myself, but help people around me. So set the standard and be a good example. As always, I appreciate you for being here, and we will see you on the next one.